Hey there everybody, it's Betsy from Story Drawing Skills, and I saw this video about you should make a webcomic and decided that I should make a webcomic, like 100 panels of webcomic from scratch in 6 months. At the time this video is recorded, there are 76 days left and 89 panels still left to go. No! But I need to trust the process, which is going to be kind of the theme of today's video and kind of a continuation of last time, because the drawing is still pretty sketchy and pretty bad, as you can see. I am lightening up the thumbnail doodle and now kind of developing it a little bit more, trying to pick, the general poses that I want my characters to be in, the general flow of the water, how it's going to be splashing about in the composition, how I want the eye flow to go. So I'm going through and drawing all kinds of little rock spiders getting washed away by the magical water that has just been released by Clarice. And also filling in a little bit of the geyser smoke and stuff, but mostly just trying to set up the panels so that I can get a better feeling of how the audience is going to see it when they actually scroll through it. Because a lot of times I just start with my thumbnails and I'm like, yeah, and then this panel, this panel, this panel. And then when I start setting it up for real, it's like, oh, this is boring. Like this shot right here. This is boring. And one of the best tips I've ever heard is that when a shot is looking boring, it's usually because everybody's head is the same size. So later you're going to see me change these panels because, as you can see, I'm drawing right now, everything is the same size. And it's very much of that like moment-to-moment stuff that is fine in storyboards. And I do have a bigger background in storyboards than I do in comics, so that could be left over from that. But it wasn't until I started changing up the head sizes that things got a little bit more interesting. I'm also playing with the way that vertical, like infinite scrolling comics can put the speech balloons in between panels rather than inside of them, and just seeing how that helps or hinders the eye flow of the reading experience. Then I decided, hey, what if I put Clarice over here, like just, winding down her water magic, and then Socorro is going to be entering the frame. And I thought that was maybe better visually to let the audience know that Socorro's position is now changing so that she's going to be standing near the other two. Then I was going to have her like say, hey, let's look over there for the thing we need to find, but it seemed so like, what do I say? Like kindergarten play? Like, we should look over there, and it just seemed so visually clumsy that I got rid of her pointing arm pretty quickly. And wasn't even sure what they were going to say here, but figured they should say something. Then I decided to put Socorro's back to the audience. Even though she doesn't get as much face time on screen, it seemed more natural for them to be conversing face to face rather than all of them looking into the distance. So then I wanted to switch it over to Socorro as she's looking for the thing that needs to be seen, and wasn't sure how I wanted to have her look around. And so I tried like doing, from a close-up, I tried doing waist-up, I tried moving these panels apart so that there's more room in between the visuals. Again, with the 3 panels, maybe doing a little diagonal, descending action right there, maybe a 3-bubble balloon all hooked up. And at first I was doing all kinds of angles of her face, but it didn't really make sense. Like, who constantly waves their head around as they're talking? So that wasn't really working. So then I just went back up and thought maybe I should try to figure out what they're saying, but gave up on that pretty quickly. So then I just sketched in some poses of her from the waist up, where she might be looking around and seeing what's going on. And then, like my thumbnail doodles said I should, I have a shot of the actual landscape, and then I'll have her reaction shot of like, oh, I think I see it. I think it's right there, that big glowing thing. And then the next panel is going to be the 3 of them starting to run toward the glowy thing. However, I realized, as I learned in a storyboarding class that I took online with Steve On, which I highly recommend if you can afford it, which I'm going to say it ain't cheap. But if you can afford it, it's really great. And in there I learned about how when your characters are going somewhere, in Western culture, it looks more like they're going somewhere if they're moving from left to right. And it has to do with our reading direction, that we read from left to right. So we naturally think the beginning, or home base, the starting point is always going to be on the left, and we feel like we're going forward and progressing if we're moving toward the right. However, I am right-handed, so I tend to start drawing on the right side and then have things descend to the left. I have a natural just affinity for a diagonal that starts low on the left and goes up toward the right. So I often start plotting out everything moving to the left, and then I have to go back and flip it around when I'm like, wait a minute, they're supposed to be moving forward, not backward. So I had to try to figure out how to fit all of my panels of everything on this canvas, and discovered that Fire Alpaca actually has a maximum height. Like, you cannot go beyond 20,000 pixels. I don't even know how many inches that is or whatever, but it just does not allow you to go past that. So I had to split up my pages and had to deal with some separately. And again, even with the very first panel with the water gushing out, at first I had her on the right and the water was gushing to the left, but again, it looked a little bit backwards because I wanted the feeling that these rock spiders are being washed away, like not returning toward them, but going away from them. So I wanted the water to switch around and move to the right. Discovered that I really didn't know how to draw water, so I went around looking for other artists on how they drew water, but that was a dead end. So then I found some pictures of ocean waves and stuff, and just thought I'd have some in my reference pictures so that I could, I don't know, just get a sense of what I wanted to capture in my own art style, like what curls I wanted to take and what sort of shapes that I wanted to draw inspiration from. Get it? Huh? That's good, right? Yeah, I'm dumb like that. I love the dad jokes. So I just started to incorporate some of those shapes because I didn't want to draw like realistic water. That's always the trouble that I get into lately, is that if I don't know how to draw something, I go and I look at a picture, but because of art school, art school, they're always teaching you see something and you replicate it. Or at least you do in your foundation years when you're just trying to learn how to draw and stuff, and your first 2 or 3 years is basically just draw what you see, draw what you see, draw what you see. So whenever I get a reference image up, I have the bad habit of just trying to replicate it as best as I can, rather than say, okay, what can I take from this reality and how can I change it to fit with the art style that I'm doing for this comic. So that's a thing sometimes. Moving these spiders all around, because at first I put them really close to the source of the water, and it looked like it was coming out of her brooch. And I'm like, whoa, guys, let's not do that. They're supposed to be washed away by this water. Something magical happened, and I just got Clarice's face like perfect first draw through, and I was very happy with that. But then, Socorro running up, something was looking weird, where she suddenly looked like she was really tiny and short, and Clarice suddenly looked like she was 7 feet tall. And I wasn't entirely sure if the perspective was off, or maybe I should have her at more of a looking down angle. So I tried a different one, but luckily I did it on a different layer because her face didn't come out as good. So I'm like, if the horizon line is there, maybe this looks right. I don't know. My point being that you're not going to get stuff right the first time, all the time. And so if you're drawing digitally, like, it's best to just try stuff, see what looks better, and go with the one that looks better. Like, that's what I'm finding out. I might put some kind of circle or something on the back of Socorro's clothes. I was realizing that from behind, all of their clothes are really boring. So maybe I should do something about that. Around this point, I was drawing, Socorro's 3-shot here, and wanted her head size to be the same in all 3, so I duplicated the circle. But she was coming out really kind of different looking in each one. I also had to keep her hands consistent because it was weird at first where she was like switching the hand that was shading her eyes all over the place. And I also decided to make her left-handed because she's using her left hand to shade her eyes, which I thought kind of visually said, like, this is her dominant hand, so we're going to go with that. Socorro is now left-handed. Filling in the landscape a little bit, the rock spiders, the puddles, all the stuff there. Get some foreground elements going, some rocks. Glowing thing's going to be over there in the distance. And trying to make the rock spiders still seem more teeny tiny, but big enough that you can tell what they are. Maybe some clouds, maybe not, I don't know. And I think this was around the time that I was checking if the panels were in the safe zone. That were I to print this ever, I don't know if I ever will, but just in case, if I ever did, I would need the panels to be within the safe zone, so I was just moving things around to make sure that could happen someday maybe. So I didn't get nearly as far as I wanted to get this week with the artwork, but it is what it is, and I'm not going to pretend like I got more work done than I actually did. So that's it for this time, and hopefully I'll be able to catch up next week.